guys, you're tuned into another installment of Young Money. I'm Nozi Pombanjwa. Now, we know that we currently live in a time where the opportunity divide exists. And this, of course, describes the disconnect between young people looking to get into the labor market and those who are looking for talent. And, of course, those being corporates. Now, converging this divide is key to strengthening a company's competitiveness and also for ensuring that young people actually have opportunities within the work environment. And this is the conversation that we're going to be having today. Now, before we get into that conversation, remember that if you want the Young Money team to come to you or at least pick up on a topic that excites you, all you need to do is drop us a tweet. That's at CNBC Africa or following me at The Real Nosy. And don't forget the hashtag is YoungMoney410. And joining me now for this discussion is Brendan Sayers, is a LabourNet Group CEO, and I'm also joined by Rob Stocks. He's the founder and CEO of Quirk, and he is joining us from our Cape Town studios. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Brendan, let's maybe start off with the challenges before we look at the opportunities and how to fix some of these problems. Why do we have this disconnect where you have young people outside of the labor market and corporates saying we can't find young talent?
I think this is definitely a South African phenomenon that we're faced with, is that your typical employer wants somebody to hit the ground running. They need somebody who's fit for the job and who is competent to perform that job. The problem is competence has two components to it. There's a theoretical background and there's also an experience. And now you're in this catch-22 situation where you cannot get the experience, you cannot get the job to get the experience, so you don't get the job.
Yeah. So, and then that's a very interesting way of looking at it, because it does actually describe the catch-22 situation that young people find themselves in. Rob, I'm coming to you in Cape Town and really trying to find out whether there have been innovative ways of trying to ensure that we bridge this divide and really allow young people to get into the workplace, but also corporates to have their business objectives met.
Yeah, look, I think that corporates have got a responsibility to bridge the gap, because it's easier for them to do so than it is for the talent. And so programs, internship programs, learnership programs, these days, which are frankly well incentivized by government through the CETAs, and if you set yourselves up correctly, you can get a lot of benefit out of that as an employer and as an employee. And we find that with a 6 to 12 month learnership or intern program, you can get someone up to speed really quickly. And then the key to keeping them there, in my opinion, largely is particularly with millennials, is purpose. They need to believe there's a reason beyond the money.
And that's a very good point, and I want to come to purpose in a moment. But before we do that, I mean, I want to tap into internships, because there's this new phrase called the internship trap, where young people get into an internship and then post the internship, the corporate gets whatever points that they require, and the young person finds that they need to go into yet another internship to stay employed. I mean, how real is this phenomena?
Well, we don't run internships per se within our organization. We've heard of problems like this in other organizations, but I think it's really down to getting your foot in the door. So my challenge to anybody who got that first opportunity is to do the best that you can with it. Companies are going to grasp hold of people that are young, dynamic, and adding value to organizations. So if you find that I'm an intern and I'm just marking time within the organization, you may get caught up in that trap. But accept the challenge. Take that internship. Don't be put off by the challenge. Take it and run with it.
I mean, I love that energy, and I want to just quickly stay with you and bring in Rob's issue around purpose. How do you align your purpose to what you're doing? I mean, you're coming in, you're young, you're doing an internship, you're probably feeling like you're at the bottom of the food chain. Do you even have a right to try and pursue your purpose at this point?
Absolutely. So we talk about meaningful work in our organization. Our biggest purpose and our vision of our organization is to make a meaningful change in our companies by taking companies and making them better employers. And I think that a young person who's idealistically entered into a university, studied what they studied, are going to look at this and possibly be able to identify this. And then the challenge is, once they've joined you, is don't just throw them into menial work. Give them that challenge and let them be exposed to making that difference and bringing about change within companies, and that excites them and keeps them.
Rob, back to purpose, which is the issue you brought before us. How do you find your purpose? Because I think once you've figured out this thing, it might be easier to latch onto it and run with it. But how do young people find their purpose?
That's a good question. For me, it's actually more about the business and the employer finding a purpose. I also want to reiterate what Brendan just said around an opportunity. You know, I think a company has a responsibility to create an opportunity, but the employee has the responsibility to make the most of it. And we find that those people that get that inherently will succeed. They will start at the bottom of the ladder, but they will quickly climb it. Frankly, they don't need to be rock stars, super intelligent, but they need to make the most of opportunities in front of them. When someone comes in with an entitled mindset that says, I deserve something, they're unlikely to succeed. When I speak of purpose, I'm more referring to the purpose of the organization that they are a part of.
Yes.
Increasingly, we find that, particularly with the best people and millennials, you know, it's a term that's thrown around a lot, but it's a real difference in point of view in a workplace. You know, my parents lived to work. They were in the same job for 40 years and they were extremely loyal, and that's the way they went about their business. We find that the new generation of employees, they work to live. Things that are important to them are how many days leave a year do I get? How flexible is my work time? How much does my boss trust me? And ultimately, at the end of the day, what is the organization that I'm a part of trying to do to change the world? And it could be as simple, you know, I run a marketing agency called Quirk, and our purpose really is to do great work for our clients, and it gets us really, really excited. And when I present something to a client and I see a twinkle in their eye, that's enough purpose for me. I love it. It really is motivating. And for many companies, that purpose exists. They possibly haven't articulated it well enough. But the truth is there are some companies that are a little bit lacking in purpose, and they will struggle to retain talent, especially that young and vibey and energetic talent.
And very, very interesting, because it also means that the ball is also partly in the corporate space in terms of creating an environment where young people can find purpose. But maybe another question to you, Brendan, is that why is it that you find that the young people might be in a very exciting environment but still don't find the thing that actually makes them tick? Are there other issues other than purpose that could be holding young talent back?
I think a lot has to do with the work environment that they get placed. People leave varsity, they're idealistic, they come to interviews, they've been sold the dream about what an organization does, and then for their first year they get thrown in the mailing room. That's enough to kill any excitement that they have. But I want to pick up on a point that Rob talked about in terms of organizational responsibility in this whole value chain of talent pipeline.
Yes.
I think what we've realized is it's naive to assume that people are competent. So let them come into the workplace, come in with their theoretical background if they are a graduate, and then really take that talent and develop it onwards. So develop it in by having internal academies that you run with people, by having career paths, by having personal development plans, by turning things around and saying that managers aren't there to be served, but that actually that you bring a component of servant leadership into your workplace, that your manager is there to take care of the employee. And I think it's Richard Branson's floating around social media at the moment. There's a saying that is attributed to him, and I don't know if it is or not, but take care of your people so that they can take care of your clients. And that's very much a philosophy that we've embraced. And I think if you're doing that, and people see that I'm not here to serve my manager, but rather that I'm here to serve my client, and my manager is going to assist me to do that, and this is how we're going to do it, and you're going to develop my career, they're going to be engaged.
There was a very interesting study, Rob, that was done where young people, young professionals in particular, were asked what their purpose is. And oftentimes, the young professionals would identify purpose outside of the workplace. Yeah. Are we getting to a place where that's changing, where what you do on a daily basis can actually be increasingly a reflection of your own purpose?
Yeah, I do think so. At the same time, I think people are increasingly not choosing to be defined by what they do in their career, which is also a transition from 20, 30 years ago, where you are what you do. People are spending more time outside of work, particularly youngsters, once again, focusing on more altruistic pursuits, and they want to be defined by that, and the work has got to support that. And so, if someone is passionate about education, for example, it doesn't mean they want to work in education, but they want to work for a company that is also passionate about education. And the reality is we live in a capitalist society, and companies, especially in South Africa, where we are starved for skills, particularly at the top end, companies have a huge incentive to nurture and develop that talent. In fact, frankly, the majority of companies live or die by the abilities of their people. And so to be competitive in the long term in such an economy, you've got to be the best in your industry at attracting and growing and retaining the talent. And it's not something that companies get to opt out of anymore. It's not something that they can blame the employee for not doing. If the company isn't getting it right, they're going to lose, and they've only got themselves to blame.
And to follow on from what Rob's saying, I think the corporate sweet spot, if you would, is when you can find that magical alignment of what fulfills the individual, and if they could do it in the workplace. But I agree with you, there's so much of, I'm here to earn the paycheck so that I can jump off mountains over the weekend, or abseil or paraglide or do whatever else that makes me happy. But if you can find that engagement in the workplace, it's a special place to be, and then things start aligning.
It's a special place to be, and that's if you find the sweet spot that speaks to your purpose, but also speaks to the business objectives of the corporate that you're working for. This is the message coming from Brendan Sayers, who's a LabourNet Group CEO, as well as Rob Stocks, founder and CEO of Quirk, who joined us from our Cape Town studios. Remember, if you do want to be a part of this show or want us to pick up on issues that are of interest to you, all you need to do is tweet us. The hashtag is YoungMoney410. Following me, of course, at The Real Nosy or at CNBC Africa. Until next time, it's goodbye.